Shalom, family. MOTC back, put more meat on the table so that we can feed these lions. And today's topic, we're going to deal with the shepherd kings. I was reading through the scriptures, and what kind of struck my spirit was, you know, being a shepherd. Now, I'm going to pull out a definition because, being a shepherd means many things. What kind of really caught my attention is that when the Egyptians said they despise or they figure that a shepherd is an abomination. And I said to myself, I'm like, yeah, but they may think that we are an abomination, but the Heavenly Father had set the shepherd and the term shepherd in a way that, a lot of people can't wear that hat. Okay. Then I started looking at it from the terms of, in a biblical sense, of what the term means when actually doing the physical work. And then I started to put together, in my head, that how our forefathers, the Israelite forefathers, and even our forefathers, Abraham, Noah, so on and so forth, they were considered as shepherds, herdsmen. So let's get the definition first of a shepherd. Let's grab the definition first. All right. So just keep in mind these terms on what a shepherd is considered. And then we're going to read a few scriptures and even inspire us as Israelites and how the Most High has blessed us to be shepherds of our nation. Okay, so let me read the definition. It says a shepherd is a person who tends, herds, feeds, and guides flocks of sheep. Historically, one of the world's oldest occupations. The role involves protecting, keep that in mind, protecting sheep from predators, ensuring access to grazing, pastures, and sometimes breeding and shearing. So there's some key words in here. It says attending, right? It says feeding. It says guarding. It says that it's an occupation, which it really is. And also, I kind of look at it like you have a city person and a country person. So a shepherd would be considered like a country boy, right? And a city boy would be considered someone that grows up or into a city atmosphere and don't have access to all of the animals and what it actually takes to run, let's say, a farm or the country part of the farm, right? So when I look at it in those terms, always keep it in mind. And as we continue to read certain scriptures, it begins to make a lot of sense how the Most High have made the most, I would say, important people on the earth, the apple of his eye, a nation of people that he called his own people. And actually, he himself derived from these same people, which is called Israelites. And their forefather were what? They were shepherds. They were herdsmen. Very interesting, though, as we put this meat on the table. So, as I read on, it says using and metaphors. Let's read that, because we want to keep certain terms of how they give examples on a herdsman, right, and a shepherd. So it says the term derives, no, not that one, right here, beyond. It says beyond tending to flock, to livestock. The word is widely used as a verb and a metaphor. As a verb, to guide or direct a group of people or things in a caring way, Keep that in mind. Like I said, besides the physical dealing with animals, a shepherd is also there to guide and help people and help people. And I'm going to continue. It says, ensuring they reach the destination safely. Keep that in mind. Shepherding a tour guide through a museum. Then it says, religious or spiritual, often used to describe a spiritual leader, pastor, or minister who guides a congregation. Okay, these are the terms that's dealing with shepherd. All right, so once again, as I think about and as I begin to read, I start to look at the occupation of our forefathers. And I'm going to start with Noah, right? I'm going to start with Noah. Then I'm going to go to Abraham, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, David, and then Christ himself, who were considered as shepherds, as the scriptures explain, and as the scriptures give you spiritual as well as give you a physical term as well. So let me get into it. We're going to start off in the book of Genesis. Let me finish sharing my screen. We're going to start off in the book of Genesis. Bear with me, family, so I can make sure that I'm sharing the proper way. Come on. Come on. I just want to get to this. Bear with me, family. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm sharing the screen. I always have problems with this here. For some reason, I always have problems sharing the screen. Here we go. Bear with me, family. Coming back again. Bear with me, family. I'm just trying to make sure that we get the right thing going. All right, we should be sharing now. There we go. Sorry about that. So we're going to start off in Genesis. Okay, we're going to start off with Genesis first. And we're going to get the accounts of Noah. I'm getting right to the point as well. So we start off with Genesis chapter 6. And we're going to start with verse 13. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is full with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So the Most High is telling Noah what he's going to do. He's going to destroy him. Skip down to verse 18. Verse 18. But with thee will I establish my covenant. Very key. I had stumbled across that because I really didn't know that the Most High made a covenant with Noah. So let's find out what this covenant is and was for during the time of Noah. Verse 18 again. It says, but with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. All right. So we just want to just make sure we get a little clear picture on Noah. Now, if we go back to the definition, let's see if they'll let me do it. We go back to the definition as far as guiding. as far as guiding and let me see. I always have a hard time with this. Always. Now it says here in the religious and spiritual, it says often used to describe a spiritual leader, pastor, or minister who guides the congregation. So in this instance, we have Noah, right? And what he's doing, according to the uh, the job that the Most High gave him, was the role involving protecting sheep from predators. Not that one. Okay, let's read up a little bit further. Here we go. A shepherd is a person who tends, herds, feeds, and guides flocks of sheep. Historically, one of the world's oldest occupation. Okay. Then it goes down to, I think that's all I wanted. But that's what Noah's job was. Noah was to bring in two of all species, male and female. And if you continue to read in Genesis chapter 7, it'll tell you about the clean and the unclean, and how many clean and how many unclean animals that he was ordered to bring into the ark. The point I'm trying to make with Noah is this, is that he was a herdsman. And once the ark got to its destination, the Most High fulfilled the prophecy of destroying the earth. Then him and his sons and his family started doing what? They started farming. They started as herdsmen. All right. So I'm going to go back to Genesis. Let's see. Go back to Genesis. All right. And let me do it this time. And I'm going to get Genesis chapter 12. I'm going to read verses 18 and 20. Genesis 12, verses 18. Now we're dealing with, I'm fast forwarding it, and now we're going to deal with Abram. We dealt with Noah. Like I said, when the ark made it to its destination, he started as a herdsman. Then time went on. Now I'm going to deal with Abram. Okay, I'm going to deal with Abram. And here we are in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 18. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Thou didst not tell me that she was your wife, or was thy wife. Okay, so now I'm bringing this out just to show how Abram received some of his riches. And one of his riches was many cattle. But a situation had to evolve that the Most High allowed to happen, which was he went down into Egypt. Now remember, now keep in mind, because here we are dealing with Abram. And Abram, during the time of Abram, Egypt was a thriving civilization. As a matter of fact, was probably one of the thriving civilizations, at that time. So Abram went down to Egypt, and as you continue to read the story, he said that his wife was his sister because he was afraid that they may kill him and take his wife. Same thing that Isaac did. I think it was Isaac. Yeah, I think it was Isaac. So here we are. So this is what he says: that thou didst. Why didst thou tell me that she was thy wife? I'm gonna continue. Verse 19. Thou said it. Why said it thou? She is my sister. So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now, therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go thy way. Now, another thing, see, when I be reading certain things, the laws always pop up in my head, which is beautiful. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Now, when Pharaoh said that I might have taken her to wife, see, that's a key right there. That's a key scriptures in law saying that, if a man have sex with a woman, then he will endow her to be his wife. Book of Exodus. Right? So that's another key that popped up. So let's continue on. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. Now keep that in mind. And all that he had. So now I'm going to go to the book of, stay in Genesis. And I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 13. And we're going to read 1. Now remember, he told him that he told his men, tell Abram to get out of there, this city, right? He gave him his wife and all that he had. So this is what Abram actually had when he left Egypt. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him unto the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. That's very key. Rich in cattle. So if Abram was rich in cattle, that lets you know that he was a herdsman. Okay. Verse 3. And he went on his journey from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tents had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first time. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Okay. And Lot also went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Very key. And that's the reason why I say our forefathers were herdsmen, were shepherds. All right. Let me drop down to verse 8. Now I just want to get into just a little bit of just pointing out how that our forefathers were herdsmen. Verse 8. And Abram said unto Lot, this is where, because it said that Lot had a lot of cattle as well. So the both of them together had so much cattle, had so much herds, that if you read Genesis chapter 13, that there was a brawl between the servants, Abraham's servants and Lot's servants. So I'm just trying to get straight to the point. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Okay, so I just want to point that out. I'm going to keep it moving. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. But just to let you know that how we were herdsmen. Now, once again, keep in mind, shepherd and herdsmen are the same. They do the same job. They make sure and they tend to the flock, tend to the sheep, and make sure that everything is safe. And that's what we do right now today as Israelite men and also the women. We guide our people to this truth. We give them the understanding of who they are according to the Bible. We give our people understanding of these other nations, but most of all, we give guidance and structure, as the Most High tells us, to lead them to where? To his laws, statutes, and commandments. So we'll be considered as herdsmen because we're doing the same occupation as our forefathers did way back in the day. Like I said, you had Noah, you had Abraham, you had Jacob, you had Moses, you had David, and you had Christ. So we dealt with Noah, we dealt with Abraham, right? How, just to put out there, how they were structured, what was their occupation, what was their riches. So now let's go into Jacob. Let's go into Jacob, because let's go to Genesis. We stand in Genesis chapter 29. Genesis chapter 29, and we're going to read 8 and 9. Okay. Now, dealing with this with Jacob. Now we know Jacob fled from Esau, and I'm sorry, Jacob left Isaac. Fleeing from Esau, and he was told to go down to their kinfolks, right? He was told, Isaac told him, do not take a wife from these other nations that's round about us, but go into the next of kin, which was Laban. So that's what Jacob did. Jacob went to the next of kin, and we're just going to jump right into it because he had to serve 7 years for Rachel, and he did 14 years because he had to serve 7 years the first time, and he was given Leah, and then he served another 7 years again, and then he was given Rachel. But in between that time, he was helping Laban with his sheep, with his flock. And it came to the point where Jacob himself made a deal with Laban, and he started to accumulate cattle for himself and his family. So I just want to jump right into that just to show you how even Jacob himself was a shepherd. Genesis chapter 29 and verse 8. And they said, we cannot until all the flock be gathered together, and until they roll the stone from the well's mouth, when the water, but then we water the sheep. Now, this is Rachel talking to Jacob. Okay. Verse 9. And while he yet spoke with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. So that lets you know that even the women had a part of this occupation as being shepherds, as being not hers women, if that's a word, but they were taking care of the flock. Okay. Women as well as men. Okay. I'm going to skip over. I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 30. Just like I said, I just want to get to the point. Genesis chapter 30. I'm going to read verses 28. Right? Verses 28. And I'm going to read that down to 32. And he said, appoint me thy wages. So now he's talking to Laban. Laban, what he did was he didn't want Jacob to leave, because Jacob, when he touched the sheep, when he touched the flock, and when he was taking care of them, Laban's prosperity increased. And it increased to a point where, like I said earlier, that Laban was literally sharing some of the flock with Jacob so that he can build his own. And at this point in time, Jacob was saying, hey, listen, I have 2 wives, I have concubines, I have children. It's time for me to go. So now he's going to make this deal with Laban. Okay, that's why he says, and he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. Okay, so now Laban trying to make a deal with him. So here's Jacob, verse 29. And he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was a little which thou hadst before I came. This is Jacob talking to Laban. And it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for my own house also? Okay, so he's breaking it down to him. So he's saying, when can I provide for my own house? Verse 31. And he said, What shall I give thee? And Jacob said, Thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will gain, feed, and keep thy flock. So now he's making a deal with Laban. I will pass through all the flock today, removing from hence all the speckled and spot cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spot and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So, not going to go all into it, but basically, he was telling the bond, like, look, if those who have spots and those who have speckles, I'll take them off your hands. Anything that didn't have those are yours. And long story short, you know, Jacob worked for him a couple of years more and increased like he said, and increased tremendously, you know, to the point where when he left Laban, he was a very rich man in cattle. All right. So I'm going to stay in chapter 30. I'm going to read verses 41. I got the wrong scripture down. Oh, no, we good. I'm going to read 41 and 43. Now we're still dealing with Jacob. Verse 41. And it came to pass whensoever the strong cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rod before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rod. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in, so that the feeble were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly and had many cattle, and maidservants, and men servants, and camels, and ass. So that's how Jacob developed his riches. But once again, my point is that Jacob's occupation was a shepherd, a herdsman. Okay, so now we got past Noah, we got past Abraham, we got past Jacob. Now let's get into Moses. Okay, so let's go to Genesis chapter 46. And we're going to read verses 31. 46 and 31. Now, once again, I'm just jumping ahead and I'm bringing out our forefathers and showing them how they accumulated their wealth, as well as how accumulating this wealth, they were shepherds, they were herdsmen. Right now, we're going to read how Joseph himself and his family, right, which was the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 brothers, right? And how when Joseph went into Egypt and the Most High had him prosper and had his family to come to Egypt. And then once he came to Egypt, he set them in a certain part of the land. Now we're going to read how the Egyptians feel about shepherds, shepherd keepers, and herdsmen. Genesis chapter 46 and verse 31. And Joseph said unto his brethren, and unto his father's house. I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, my brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade have been to feed cattle, and they have brought their cattle, their flocks, and their herds, and all that they have. See, that's how the 12 sons were. They were herdsmen, they were shepherds. Now we continue to read verse 43. And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you and shall say, what is your occupation? Once again, I read the definition of what is considered the occupation of a herdsman, which is a shepherd. Verse 34. That ye shall say, thy servant's trade have been about cattle from our youth even until now, both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. See, and that's how most of the, I would say, the upper class civilizations thought of those who tend to cattle and sheep. They thought that they were abomination. They thought that they were beneath them. See, and that's funny because the Most High always go with the underdog. Always. If you look at the younger, the older shall serve the younger, then we're talking about Esau. We're talking about Esau and Jacob. If we're talking about David, which we're going to get into David as well, out of all of his brothers, the Most High chose him, and he was the youngest. So it's just certain things and certain, I would say, certain ways that the Most High chooses, and how the Most High set things up for his advantage, not for the advantage of the world, not for the advantage of other people, how they think. No, he set it up for his advantage so that he can show his power and his strength. The same thing he's doing to us now. The same reason why we put this food on this table to feed these lions, just to give you guys something to think about, to give you guys and the women also something to be proud of about our people and our nation. Okay. So now let's get into Moses. We got into Jacob. That was Jacob. Like I said, I'm just going to just bring out certain scriptures, and let's get into Moses. Let's go to the book of Numbers 27 and verse 15. Now here's Moses. And Moses spoke unto the Lord, saying, let the Lord, the God of the spirit of all flesh, set a man over the congregation. Once again, we go back into what the definition of a shepherd is. And a shepherd, they said, is to guide the congregation. So here, the Most High is telling Moses, right? He says, let the Lord, the God of all spirits, let the God of spirit of all flesh set a man over the congregation. Verse 17, which may go out before them, and which may go in before them, and which may lead them out, and which may bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord be not as sheep which have no shepherd. Okay, more meat put on the table. That's why the title is called The Shepherd Kings. Okay. So now we dealt with Moses. Now we're going to deal with David. Let's deal with David. So let's go to 1 Samuel. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're going to start at 10 and 11. So now we're going to deal with David. Again, Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel. And Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord have not chosen these. All right, so verse 11. And Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all thy sons? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. Okay, continue to read. I just wanted to bring out those 2 scriptures right there. It's because they said that David was the youngest and he was out feeding the sheep. All right. I'm going to read verse 12 just for the sake of continue on. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and with all of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for he is he. For this is he. So here we are. David, the king of Israel, when he was anointed by Saul, was doing what? He was in the field tending to the sheep as a shepherd. We know David was a mighty warrior. And once again, the occupation of a shepherd was to protect the flock. When you continue to read about David and he starts to share his experience as a shepherd, he would tell you that he killed a lion, he killed a bear, okay, that was threatening the sheep under his care. So as we go down the line, so now we dealt with David. So now let's just jump over and let's deal with Christ himself, Yahweh Shai, our Lord and Savior. Let's just deal with Christ now. One more for David. Let's go to Ezekiel. Let's get one more for David, showing that he was a shepherd as well. Ezekiel chapter 34. And we're going to read verse 23. Verse 23. And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them. He shall be their shepherd. Okay. So even though the Egyptians said that herdsmen and shepherds was an abomination to them, still the Most High chose them to carry out mighty, mighty works. So let's deal with Christ himself. Let's deal with Christ himself. Let's deal with St. John. St. John chapter 10. And we're going to read just 14. Now we're talking about Christ. I am the good shepherd and know my sheep, and I'm known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. See, Christ himself was the chief shepherd. Let's continue on. Let's get First Peter. Let's get First Peter 5, and then we're going to read verse 4. Verse 4. Okay, let's read above that. Well, actually, just verse 4. Just verse 4. Because now we're dealing with Christ. So we dealt with Noah, we dealt with Abraham, we dealt with Jacob, we dealt with Moses, we dealt with David. Now we're dealing with Christ as being shepherds on a physical level, occupational level, as well as on the spiritual level. Because remember, I always refer back into that definition of what a shepherd was qualified to do and what a shepherd job was. And here is Christ himself saying this. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 4. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, he shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. So here we is saying in 1 Peter that Christ is the chief shepherd. And we know and we can read about when Christ was here walking this earth, what he did for the children of Israel. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. He gave wisdom and understanding about prophecy. Okay. And then after all of that, he gave his life for the sheep, as it says right here. But remember also, he is the chief shepherd. So bottom line, Israel, there's nothing wrong with calling the children of Israel shepherd kings, because we have a whole line of history, of our forefathers being shepherds to lead the flock of the children of Israel to the kingdom of heaven that the Most High God, through his son Yahweh Shai, promised unto us. So with that, Israel, we say shalom. And to a next episode of Feed the Lions, we say be safe.